Have you ever wondered if loneliness in old age is something to fear or embrace? Most people imagine their later years filled with friends, gatherings, and social connections. But what if solitude could be the key to inner peace and personal growth? In this video, we'll explore a perspective that might challenge everything you've believed about aging and friendship. We'll dive into the teachings of Buddha, who offered a profound view of solitude that many overlook. By the end of this video, you'll discover why embracing solitude, especially in old age, can lead to a richer, more fulfilling life. You'll hear the story of Kenjiro, an elderly man who found peace and enlightenment not through the company of others, but through quiet moments alone. You'll learn how letting go of attachments and facing yourself can help you grow in ways you never imagined. Stay with us to uncover the powerful lessons of self-reflection, freedom from dependence, and the true meaning of contentment. Trust me, this is one video you won't want to miss. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. Choosing not to make friends. When we envision our twilight years, many of us paint a picture of warm, joyful companionship. We imagine quiet afternoons spent reminiscing with old friends, lively gatherings filled with laughter, or newfound connections through hobbies and community groups. For most, these relationships symbolize comfort, security, and a sense of belonging during the golden years. However, Buddhist teachings offer a strikingly different viewpoint. The Buddha, known for his profound wisdom, believed that the later stages of life were an opportunity not for accumulating friendships but for embracing solitude. By understanding the depth of this teaching, we can challenge societal norms and discover how solitude, rather than companionship, can become a path to profound peace and self-realization. The weight of loneliness in old age. Loneliness is a fear that haunts many as they age. It is not just the absence of people that stirs this fear, but the perceived loss of purpose and connection. The thought of sitting in a quiet home, watching the hours endlessly without companionship, can evoke a deep sense of despair. The heartache of losing a spouse or seeing children move far away only amplifies this dread. For countless individuals, the natural response to these feelings is to seek refuge in others, to surround themselves with voices that drown out the silence. However, Buddhism offers an alternative perspective on this struggle. Solitude, often misunderstood as loneliness, is not an enemy to be feared but a friend to be embraced. The Buddha taught that solitude is a sacred space where the soul finds freedom from the distractions of the world. It is here, in the stillness of our own company, that we can confront our fears, heal our wounds, and uncover the boundless potential for peace and wisdom that lies within us. To explore this idea further, let us turn to the story of Kenjiro, an elderly man whose journey from fear to enlightenment serves as a powerful example of the transformative power of solitude. Kenjiro's journey, from companionship to stillness. Kenjiro was a man beloved by all in his rural village. Known for his hearty laugh and generous spirit, his home was a hub of social activity for decades. Friends would gather around his fireplace in the winter and his garden in the summer, sharing stories, meals, and laughter. Kenjiro thrived in this camaraderie, drawing immense joy from the relationships he had nurtured over the years. But as time passed, Kenjiro began to notice a change. His friends grew older, and many passed away. The once lively gatherings became smaller and less frequent. Though he tried to rekindle his social circle, a quiet unease began to take root in his heart. After every visit or gathering, he felt an inexplicable emptiness. The joy he once felt in the presence of others now seemed fleeting, replaced by a longing he could not name. One crisp autumn morning, troubled by his restless heart, Kenjiro decided to visit a nearby temple he had often admired but rarely entered. It was nestled at the foot of a mountain, surrounded by trees whose golden leaves shimmered in the sunlight. Hoping to find guidance, he approached a monk who was sweeping the temple grounds. The encounter with the monk. Kenjiro bowed deeply and shared his struggles with the monk. "Reverend," he said, "I fear the loneliness that seems to creep closer with each passing day. My friends are few, and my home is silent. How can I bring back the joy I once felt in their company?" If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The monk, an elderly man with kind eyes and a serene smile, listened intently. After a moment of silence, he replied, "Kenjiro, your loneliness is not a burden to overcome but a teacher to learn from. Buddha himself did not recommend seeking friends in old age. Kenjiro's brow furrowed in surprise. "But why?" he asked. "Aren't friends the source of comfort and joy, especially in these later years?" The monk placed his broom aside and gestured for Kenjiro to sit with him under a large maple tree. "Let me explain," he said. "The Buddha's teachings on solitude are not about rejecting others, but about embracing the sacredness of your own company. Let me share with you 3 lessons that can transform the way you see solitude." The 3 teachings of Buddha on solitude. 1. Solitude as the path to inner peace. When we are surrounded by people, even those we love, our minds often become restless. We are pulled in different directions by their emotions, needs, and expectations. Solitude, however, is a sanctuary where the mind can rest. In the stillness, we hear the whispers of wisdom that the noise of the world often drowns out. This peace is not emptiness but fullness. Fullness of clarity, understanding, and self-awareness. 2. Solitude and the freedom from attachments. Attachments, even to friendships, can be a source of great suffering. People change, relationships fade, and loss is inevitable. By clinging to these connections, we tie ourselves to the pain of impermanence. In solitude, we learn to release these attachments and find a love that is unconditional and independent of others. A love that arises from within. 3. Solitude as a gateway to enlightenment. The Buddha himself sought solitude in his quest for enlightenment. It is in solitude that we confront the truth of our existence and discover the boundless potential of our spirit. In the quiet, we are free to explore the depths of our souls and connect with the divine. This is not loneliness, Kenjiro. It is liberation. A transformative journey. Kenjiro left the temple that day with much to ponder. Over the following months, he began to incorporate the monk's teachings into his life. He set aside time each day to sit quietly by the river that ran near his home, watching its gentle flow and listening to the rustling leaves. He began to let go of his expectations from others, finding joy in simple things: the warmth of the sun on his face, the sound of birds at dawn, the feel of the earth beneath his feet. Slowly but surely, Kenjiro's fear of loneliness dissolved. He no longer sought to fill the silence with conversations or distractions. Instead, he embraced it as a sacred space for reflection and growth. The solitude he once dreaded became a source of strength and serenity. Reframing old age. Solitude as a gift. Kenjiro's journey invites us to rethink our relationship with solitude and companionship in old age. While society often equates happiness with social connections, Buddhist teachings remind us that true contentment comes from within. Solitude is not a void to be feared, but a canvas upon which we can paint the masterpiece of our inner life. It is a time to cultivate peace, wisdom, and a profound connection with the divine. As we age, let us not fear the quiet moments but cherish them. Let us see them as opportunities to grow, heal, and rediscover ourselves. In the stillness of solitude, we may find not just contentment but the truest expression of who we are. Teaching 1. Solitude to face yourself. The monk's voice was calm, yet it carried a gravity that felt almost tangible. He began with a teaching that felt both ancient and universal: the transformative power of solitude. He spoke of how Buddha had taught that as one nears the twilight of life, it becomes essential to turn inward and confront the essence of one's being. In the quiet of solitude, the monk explained, you meet yourself, your true self, free from masks, free from the roles imposed by society. He warned that excessive involvement with others, while often comforting, could scatter one's energy and distract from the deeper truths that lie within. For Kenjiro, these words were like a mirror held up to his soul, revealing a part of himself he had long avoided. He sat silently, feeling as though the monk had unknowingly recited the story of his life. Kenjiro had spent years pouring himself into relationships, chasing the fleeting sense of worthiness that came from being needed, liked, or admired. Now, in the face of the monk's wisdom, he realized the toll it had taken on his connection to his inner being. A painful realization. The monk's teaching stayed with Kenjiro long after their conversation ended, gnawing at the edges of his consciousness. That night, as he lay awake, memories began to surface, some vivid, others hazy. He remembered his youth, a time when the laughter and companionship of friends had been his sanctuary. Back then, he believed that their presence was proof of his value and that the bonds he formed gave his life meaning. But as the years passed, Kenjiro began to feel a hollowness that no amount of socializing could fill. He realized that he had been avoiding something, perhaps even running from it. The monk's words clarified what it was: himself. The truth was both sobering and liberating. For so long, he had sought validation from others, mistaking their approval for self-worth. Now, he saw that he had neglected the one relationship that mattered most, the relationship with himself. But this epiphany was not without its challenges. As Kenjiro began to distance himself from his social circles, a wave of loneliness washed over him. It was a strange, unfamiliar loneliness, not the kind that comes from a lack of people but from the absence of distraction. In this stillness, he was forced to face the thoughts, fears, and regrets he had long buried beneath the noise of his busy life. Embracing solitude. The weeks following his conversation with the monk were a time of quiet transformation. Kenjiro decided to embrace solitude, not as a punishment but as a practice. He began each day with a simple ritual, rising before dawn and stepping outside to greet the world. The mornings were cool and quiet, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. As he walked through the countryside, he noticed things he had never paid attention to before: the way the dew clung to the grass, the gentle hum of insects waking with the sun, and the soothing rhythm of his breath. These walks became a cornerstone of Kenjiro's new life. They were more than exercise. They were a meditation, a time to listen to the whispers of his heart. As the days turned into weeks, he began to feel a shift within himself. The emptiness he had feared so much was gradually replaced by a quiet contentment, a sense of peace that came not from others but from within. Kenjiro also turned to journaling, a practice the monk had suggested. Each evening, he would sit by the window with a cup of tea, writing down his thoughts, fears, and reflections. At first, the pages were filled with confusion and doubt, but over time, his words became more confident, more hopeful. Through this process, he began to uncover parts of himself he had forgotten, dreams he had abandoned, values he had compromised, and a sense of purpose that had been buried beneath years of distraction. Discovering the beauty in solitude. Months passed, and Kenjiro's daily routines became imbued with a sense of purpose and mindfulness. He no longer filled his days with endless conversations or sought the company of others to stave off boredom. Instead, he found joy in the simplicity of life, watching the sunset, tending to his small garden, or reading a book by the fire. The world, once so chaotic and demanding, now felt calm and welcoming. One morning, as he walked through a grove of trees, Kenjiro stopped and closed his eyes. He listened to the symphony of nature around him, the rustling leaves, the distant chirping of birds, the gentle breeze brushing against his skin. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive, truly present. At that moment, he realized that solitude was not loneliness. It was a gift, a chance to reconnect with the essence of who he was. The transformation of the soul. The more time Kenjiro spent alone, the more he grew. Solitude became his teacher, showing him that he didn't need others to define his worth or provide him with a sense of belonging. He learned to find joy in his own company, to listen to his own heart, and to trust his instincts. The monk's teaching had set him on a path not just of self-discovery but of self-reclamation. Kenjiro's transformation was not just internal, it radiated outward. People who knew him began to notice a change, a calmness, a quiet confidence, and a lightness in his step. They saw a man who was no longer weighed down by the need to please or impress. Instead, he was simply himself, authentic, content, and at peace. The profound gift of solitude. In the end, Kenjiro came to understand that solitude was not an escape from the world but a return to oneself. It was in this stillness that he rediscovered his dreams, his values, and his purpose. The quiet moments he once feared became the foundation of his strength and clarity. Kenjiro's journey serves as a timeless reminder that the greatest transformations often begin in solitude. It is in the quiet, when we dare to face ourselves, that we find not only peace but the courage to live authentically and fully. And in doing so, we come to see that the richness of life is not found in the noise of the world but in the stillness of the soul. Teaching 2. Letting go of attachments. The monk's next teaching, delivered with a calm yet unmistakably powerful presence, resonated deeply within Kenjiro's heart. It spoke of the profound importance of letting go of attachments, a theme that reverberated through Kenjiro's soul, echoing Buddha's timeless wisdom. Buddha had warned that attachments, even those born of love and friendship, could be traps that ensnare the heart, leaving one vulnerable to the devastating agony of separation. In his life, Kenjiro had never truly understood this concept, but now, as the monk's words sank in, he began to see the truth behind them. The monk explained how even the most meaningful relationships, the friendships we hold dear, often carry hidden burdens that we fail to recognize until we are faced with loss. Kenjiro's mind drifted to a time not long ago, when a close friend had moved away unexpectedly, leaving him with a sudden, sharp sense of loneliness. The distance between them grew with each passing day, and with it, an emptiness crept into his life, a loneliness that felt heavier than he had anticipated. It wasn't just the physical absence of his friend, but the emotional void that followed. He realized that parting with someone he had once considered inseparable from his life had left him feeling as though a piece of himself had been taken. The monk's words, gentle yet firm, now became clear. It was the attachment itself that had caused him suffering. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. At that moment, Kenjiro felt as though a veil had been lifted from his eyes, and the world before him appeared in a new light. The monk's teaching seemed so simple, yet so profound. The less we hold on to it, the less we stand to lose. By clinging to attachments, whether to friends, family, or even material things, we bind ourselves to suffering. Letting go was not about rejecting love or compassion, but about freeing oneself from the emotional burdens that came with holding on too tightly. It was a lesson in finding peace, not in others, but within oneself. The monk spoke of the impermanence of life, the simple truth that everything, from relationships to possessions, was transient. To hold on tightly to these things was to live in constant fear of losing them. The monk urged Kenjiro to embrace the concept of detachment, not as a form of indifference but as an act of profound wisdom, a way to preserve one's inner peace. The journey toward freedom from attachment. Kenjiro's journey of understanding began with a subtle shift in his perspective. He began to observe his relationships with greater awareness, noticing how even the most cherished friendships often carried with them subtle threads of expectation, dependence, and a quiet need for validation. He realized that deepening his relationships over the years had often led him to unintentionally bind himself to others through these unspoken needs. When one's heart is bound by these attachments, even the smallest shifts, such as a change in a friend's behavior or distance, can cause emotional turmoil. Kenjiro had spent much of his life seeking validation and emotional fulfillment from others, believing that love and companionship were the only paths to happiness. However, he now began to see that this dependence on others for his sense of worth was a fragile foundation. The fear of abandonment and the dread of being alone all stemmed from the same root, attachment. The monk's wisdom urged Kenjiro to consider the possibility that true freedom and lasting happiness came not from relying on others but from cultivating strength and self-sufficiency within. Kenjiro began to ask himself difficult questions. What would happen if he could live without the constant need for others' approval or affection? What would his life look like if he could let go of his dependence on the external world to define his happiness? Slowly, the answers began to take shape in his heart. He realized that old age, a time often associated with loss and solitude, could be transformed into a period of profound richness. The strength to live fully in solitude, to find peace even without the comforting presence of others, was not a sign of weakness but of inner strength. In his youth, he had seen loneliness as a curse, something to be feared and avoided at all costs. But now, as he sat in the quiet of his thoughts, he recognized that solitude was not something to flee from but to embrace. The ability to live alone, without fear or yearning, was a form of liberation, a form of self-mastery that allowed him to experience the world more fully, more deeply, and with less attachment. Liberation and the blossoming of inner peace. With newfound resolve, Kenjiro decided to slowly detach from the relationships and external attachments that had once been the foundation of his emotional life. At first, the thought of stepping back from his friendships seemed impossible. He feared that he might lose the love and companionship that had always been a part of him. But as he reflected deeper, he realized that it wasn't about rejecting those people or abandoning love. It was about letting go of the emotional weight that he had placed on these relationships. The process was slow, deliberate, and at times painful. He gently distanced himself from the constant need to connect with others, not out of bitterness but out of a desire to grow stronger in his self-sufficiency. Kenjiro began to fill his days with solitary pursuits that nourished his soul. He took up reading with a renewed passion, diving into the timeless wisdom of great philosophers, spiritual leaders, and poets who had walked the path of inner freedom before him. Each book became a guide, each page a step toward deeper self-understanding. Meditation became a cornerstone of his daily routine, a way to reconnect with his inner self, quiet the mind, and release the unnecessary clutter of emotions and thoughts that kept him from experiencing true peace. The more he practiced, the more he discovered that true inner peace did not come from the world outside. It came from the stillness within. In the silence of his own company, Kenjiro found a quiet joy that was not dependent on anyone else. The loneliness that had once threatened to consume him now felt like a soft companion, a teacher that invited him to discover a deeper, more intimate relationship with his soul. Over time, he began to feel a profound shift, a sense of freedom and tranquility that was unlike anything he had experienced before. The pressure of external expectations, and the need for validation from others, began to dissolve. He realized that his happiness was no longer tied to anyone else's presence or approval. He was finally free to live fully and authentically, without the weight of attachment weighing him down. Kenjiro's journey toward liberation was not one of isolation but one of connection, to himself, to the universe, and the present moment. He learned that the essence of life is found in the ability to let go. By releasing his attachment to external things and people, he was able to embrace life more fully, more deeply, and with a sense of gratitude that was unshaken by the inevitable changes of life. Through letting go, Kenjiro discovered a well of inner peace that could never be taken away. He learned that true love, true friendship, and true happiness are not things we possess but experiences we allow to flow freely through us, unburdened by attachment. In this space of release, Kenjiro found not just peace but an expansive joy that permeated every part of his being. His soul was free, and in that freedom, he felt a profound connection to the world, untouched by the fleeting nature of attachment. Teaching 3. Preparing for Enlightenment. The monk's final teaching left an indelible mark on Kenjiro's heart, as it called him to a deep, spiritual awakening. The monk spoke of the great wisdom of preparing for enlightenment, an approach that transcended worldly attachments and the fleeting desires of the material world. According to Buddha, old age was not a time of despair or regret but a profound opportunity for spiritual preparation. It was in these final years that one could begin to sever the ties that bound them to the transient nature of life. In truth, he explained, the key to attaining enlightenment lay in learning how to let go of attachments, relationships, and most poignantly, the sense of self that clung to the world. The monk shared that Buddha's teachings on impermanence were not meant to evoke fear or sadness. Rather, they were meant to instill peace by showing that detachment from the ever-changing world is the path to tranquility. Relationships, no matter how deeply cherished, could often act as weights on the mind, keeping one from achieving the clarity required to walk the path of enlightenment. The act of over-investing in friendships and attachments, though often motivated by love, could ultimately hinder the essential mental preparation for achieving a state of inner peace. True enlightenment, the monk advised, was about the ability to experience peace and equanimity that transcends the noise of the external world. Growth through the embrace of solitude. At first, Kenjiro found the thought of solitude overwhelming, a daunting silence that seemed to hold nothing but emptiness. He had always been surrounded by others, finding comfort in companionship and the constant distractions of daily life. But as the monk's words sank deeper into his soul, Kenjiro began to understand that it was only through embracing solitude that he could come to terms with the true nature of his being. In those first moments of stillness, Kenjiro was forced to confront the parts of himself he had long buried. His fears, his insecurities, and the wounds of his past that had shaped him into who he was. The quiet that had once seemed suffocating now revealed itself as a sacred space for healing. No longer distracted by the noise of the world, Kenjiro could finally look within, acknowledging his weaknesses without shame, and understanding his strengths without arrogance. Solitude, Kenjiro realized, was not something to be feared or avoided. It was in this stillness that his true nature could emerge. The silence, which once felt like a void, was now filled with the potential for personal transformation. The absence of others, which had once caused him anxiety, began to feel like the freedom he had longed for. In the solitude of his own company, he came to see that his growth could not be found in the eyes of others, nor the words of well-meaning friends. It could only be found by looking within, by sitting in the quietness of his mind and allowing his spirit to unfold. Kenjiro's path to enlightenment. Kenjiro's spiritual practice deepened with each passing day. He committed himself to the discipline of Zazen meditation, dedicating hours each morning to sitting in stillness, focusing on his breath, and embracing the discomfort that arose from sitting quietly in his thoughts. The outside world began to fade into the background as his internal landscape became clearer and more serene. The weight of the world, with its pressures to achieve, to be liked, and to be seen, began to melt away. He was no longer a man defined by his external circumstances or the judgments of others. Through the practice of meditation, Kenjiro found a new kind of joy, one that was not dependent on external circumstances. He stopped seeking validation from others. He stopped measuring his worth by the standards of society or the opinions of those around him. Instead, he began to experience joy in simply being. The peace he had once thought elusive now flowed freely through him, not as an extraordinary achievement but as a quiet, constant presence that grounded him in every moment. In the solitude of his life, Kenjiro began to glimpse the very nature of enlightenment. It was not a grand revelation or an explosive insight. It was not found in the hustle of life or the pursuit of success. Enlightenment, he realized, was found in the stillness, in the gentle presence of the now. It was in the acceptance of impermanence, in the deep awareness that all things come and go, including our desires and attachments. Rediscovering the joy of simple things. As Kenjiro's life slowed, he began to see the beauty in the small, everyday moments that had once escaped his notice. The simple act of watching the flowers bloom in the spring seemed like a miracle, a moment of quiet radiance that he had never truly appreciated before. The delicate petals of the flowers, each one reaching towards the sun in quiet surrender, became a reminder of the fleeting beauty of life. Each moment, no matter how small, was a gift to be cherished. The sound of birds singing at dawn, which had once been mere background noise, now filled him with a sense of profound peace. Their songs were not just notes in the air, but expressions of life, of joy, of connection. The wind, once a mere element of nature, became a tactile experience, its gentle caress on his cheeks reminding him of the simple, unspoken connection between himself and the universe. These simple pleasures, which he had once brushed aside in the rush of life, now filled his days with profound meaning. Loneliness, which he had feared and avoided, had transformed into an experience of tranquility. He no longer saw solitude as a burden but as a source of peace. It was in these quiet moments, without the noise of social obligations or the pressure to perform, that Kenjiro found the richness of life. Gratitude for friendship, love for solitude. Though Kenjiro had come to cherish his solitude, he did not forget the importance of the friendships that had shaped him. He was deeply grateful for the people who had walked beside him on his journey, who had supported him in times of difficulty, and who had loved him through his imperfections. He recognized that these relationships had been necessary for his growth, and for that, he was thankful. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Yet, as time passed, Kenjiro realized that the space he had carved out for himself, the solitude he had once feared, had become a treasure. In his quiet moments, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment that had nothing to do with others' opinions of him. His own company became enough. He discovered that there was a deep and immeasurable joy in being with oneself, in exploring the vast inner landscape that had once seemed so alien. The solitude that had once terrified him now felt like home. Kenjiro's heart swelled with gratitude, not just for his friends and companions but for the wisdom that solitude had gifted him. He had discovered a depth of inner peace that surpassed any external affirmation. His days spent in solitude were not empty. They were rich with self-discovery, with small joys, and with a deep connection to the present moment. Enlightenment in the everyday. In time, Kenjiro came to understand that enlightenment was not some distant, unattainable goal. It was not an abstract ideal that existed outside of him. Rather, enlightenment was a way of being, a profound, unwavering acceptance of life as it is. It was found in the quiet moments of being fully present, in the ability to sit with the uncertainty and impermanence of life without attachment or fear. Enlightenment, Kenjiro realized, was not about renouncing the world or escaping its challenges. It was about embracing the world with an open heart, fully aware of its fleeting nature, and yet deeply grounded in peace. He understood that every experience, whether joyous or painful, could be a gateway to enlightenment if approached with mindfulness and acceptance. Kenjiro's journey was not a path to escape from life but a deeper immersion into it. He had come to realize that it was in the simplicity of each passing day, in the acceptance of both light and shadow, that he found his truest self. And in that profound truth, he found a peace that had always been within him. As we come to the end of Kenjiro's profound journey toward enlightenment, take a moment to reflect on what you've learned. What part of his story resonated most with you? Was it the importance of embracing solitude, finding joy in the simplicity of life, or the wisdom in preparing for enlightenment by letting go of attachments? Now, we'd love to hear from you. What is one thing you've learned from this story that you will bring to practice in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights may inspire others on their journeys. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, please leave your comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay connected and explore more stories that spark reflection and growth. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.